Greetings, friends and fellow freelancers. Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop Mercenary. This week, I want to address a piece of advice that I am certain, if you were a creative person, if you've been thinking about giving this sort of field a shot, you have heard. Someone has said it to you, either well-meaning or not, or you've probably given this advice to other creative people that you know, and you thought that you were being encouraging, you were giving them a pat on the back, trying to get that momentum going forward. But I want to talk about why it's kind of a terrible idea if you plan on doing this for a living. That advice is, of course, follow your passion. We've all heard it, and a lot of us internalize what it means. And on the surface, it sounds great. If you have a passion for something, if you really want to do something, then you should find a way to turn that into your profession, into your career, at least into a side hustle. Because at the end of the day, everyone has to earn a living. That is the system we live in, and it's what we're stuck with. But if you're going to have to work, you should at least be working doing something you really like, doing something that you enjoy, doing something that you're passionate about, that you can get fired up about. But at the same time, it's important to realize that some of us take this too far, we push it into ourselves a little too deeply, and we start building a narrative based on mythology that we've heard. And yet we've all heard the stories of people who quote unquote followed their passion and made it, whatever that means to you. And it's usually people who, they took crazy risks, or they sacrificed a lot of themselves, or they really pushed themselves above and beyond, and they made themselves into this huge success story. And a lot of us, when we hear follow your passion, those are the stories we think about. Whether it's, actors who slept in their car trying to take all of the roles until they became famous, or whether it's someone who started a random podcast and just happened to hit the market at the right time and became this massive success. Or it's someone who made a little game that they figured this will just be fun, and then it exploded, at least as far as games explode. And so often we think that the key ingredient, the secret to success, is passion. And that if you love your game enough, if you're enthusiastic enough about what you're doing, if you drive yourself hard enough, that will lead you to succeed. And on the one hand, that is true in terms of making good art, in terms of making good games. The more that you push yourself, the more that you learn, the more that you work and practice, the better the stuff you'll put out. I'm not going to disagree with that. And if you have a passion, if you want to make games, that is absolutely something you should be doing. You should always be creating and refining and learning and driving yourself to do better, be better, make more stuff, make interesting stuff. However, your passion for your project has little to nothing to do with how well it sells and how well it's, accepted by the market. And you will have people out there telling you that if you're just writing to a project, if you're just creating something because that's the assignment you were given, you're just doing this for a check, people will be able to tell. Those folks are the same as the high school teachers telling you they can tell whether or not you read the book, who give you an A when you just threw it together half an hour before class without having to read any of it. If you have skill, if you have drive, if you have practiced, you can apply that skill to a slew of different projects. And that is really the key, and what I think people should internalize. Because as the song lyrics say, being a rock star is a fun job, but it's still a job. So too is being a creative professional. And while it is lovely to get to work on projects that you really like, or to helm your own projects, to make things that are your passion babies, things that you want to make happen, a lot of the time you don't have that option. Or you'll get to a part of your own project that you don't care about, you really don't want to do this part, but it has to be done for it to be complete. The key is to be able to apply your skill, your passion, to forge that into a tool that serves you, not something that you're constantly chasing to find fulfillment. As an example, when I've mentioned this on the channel before, but for those who don't, go back through the archives and check older videos, when I first became a writer, when I decided that's what I wanted to do for a living, I wanted to be a novelist, or at least a short story writer. And I thought that was just a great way to make a living. I just wanted to be kind of left alone to write books, whether alone or in series. And I have done that. Links below for folks who want to check out either my Hard-Boiled Cat series about a noir detective who happens to be a Maine Coon alley cat, or Old Soldiers, which for folks who have enjoyed my Space Marine stories is, again, about oversized, genetically engineered super soldiers who have gotten themselves involved in a lot of nonsense. But personal plug aside. So I wanted to write books, and I thought to myself, well, that's a great idea. I'm going to start early. I'm going to learn how to do that. And I started applying myself. I started writing a lot of short stories. I started writing a lot of fiction. But what I found is that that was a really unreliable market. I've been winning contests and earning checks since around my junior year of high school. That was when I really started to think maybe I could make this happen. But I quickly learned that you just don't get enough money from that unless you have some kind of agent, unless you have a book deal, unless you have a really passionate supporting audience. You're not going to make enough money to every month have a check for your landlord. So I thought to myself, well, I can either have a day job and write fiction on the side, or I can make my day job more writing. It just won't be my writing. It won't be the kind of writing I want to do. All right, fair enough. So I took my passion for writing, for putting words on the page, for creating things in text, and I found ways that I could make money doing that. I became a reporter for a local newspaper. Journalism was never really my passion, but I gave it, if not my all, I gave it what I had. I made sure that, my articles were good, that they were engaging, that people wanted to pick up the paper to read what I was talking about. And from there, I moved on to other similar projects. I wrote for a couple of online magazines for a while until those dried up. I've written for catalog descriptions. I believe Captain's Beds was actually the first thing I got a job for. I've written for online casinos, online dating websites. There was a lot of people who needed text. And that was a thing that I had a skill for. So there were at least some jobs where it was, I just needed a paycheck. I just needed the client to, cut me, my earnings at the end of this job so that I could pay rent and get back to working on what I wanted to work on. But there have been other jobs where I was the one behind it. I was the creative drive. And even under those ideal circumstances where I'm behind the wheel, where I've chosen the route, where I'm going where I want to go, there's still going to be days where passion flags, where you don't feel like doing it. And when that happens, discipline, skill, experience, these are things you end up relying on. Because passion is great. Passion is often the gas in the tank when you're first getting started. But passion is kind of a sloppy emotion. Of some days you're really feeling it, you really want to buckle down, you want to spend 5-6 hours putting out thousands and thousands of words, doing, 9 hours a day on a single illustration. But you need to be able to temper your passion. You need to be able to apply it to other things. You need to essentially forge it into a sword that will be by your side, that will do what you need it to do. It shouldn't be a force that's leading you around by the nose while you're just hoping that it gets you where you want to go. And this is where we come to the financial success aspect of it. Because so many of us, when we hear, follow your passion and everything will be fine, what we think is, if we have a passion, if we really want to do this, if we really want something badly enough, that if we follow it, it'll just happen. And anyone who has made RPGs, who has written novels, who has done illustrations, well, that noise the rest of you are hearing is them guffawing possibly into their coffee cups. Because wanting something will not make it happen, not by itself. And that is the aspect of doing this, of you need to have at least a little bit of business acumen. You need to be able to read the market. You need to understand what it is your readers will respond to, what players want, and give it to them. Because if you don't, you could make the greatest possible game that you wanted. You could just pour your heart and soul into it, and no one's going to care because it is not what the market wanted. As an example of, as I mentioned before on the show, I really enjoy writing tie-in fiction. And for folks who recently watched the latest Speaking of Sundara, I asked the audience, like, hey, is this something you'd like to see more of for my fantasy setting? Would you be engaged by tie-in novellas, tie-in novels, tie-in anything like that? Just laying out some stories that happen in this setting to give everyone a different perspective on it. And I knew even before I made that video, that was a really long shot, because I have written tie-in fiction for for both my own stuff and for really popular settings. There's Tales from the Moot is an example of, it's a Werewolf the Apocalypse collection that I put together with High Level Games, Josh Heath, and a bunch of other folks. It still hasn't even broken copper yet. Means it hasn't even moved 50 sales. It didn't matter how much we really believed in the project, how much we enjoyed writing those stories, even how popular the World of Darkness was, and just how many people love Werewolf. That wasn't a product people really got behind. It wasn't something people were really passionate about. So it didn't matter how good we made our stories. It didn't matter how engaging the fiction was, if that's not what people want. And it's the same thing for any other game as I've run into similar issues with my Sundara setting of, while people are still playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, there's not a lot of passion for Pathfinder's 1st edition, which is the game that I made the setting for. There's still players for it, don't get me wrong. But, I can't sit down, put together a supplement for a Pathfinder 1st edition rule set for an independently owned, independently created at least, fantasy RPG setting, and just expect that because I really love it, that because I thought it was really great, other people are going to pick that up. It defies the numbers. Even if it got super popular among what's left of the Pathfinder 1st edition crowd, I'm looking at a couple hundred sales at most. It does not matter how much of myself I put into that. It doesn't matter how engaged I am, how much passion I have for the project. I have to be realistic about what the market is and what the size of the pool I'm swimming in is. And this is the basic lesson of what follow your passion can get you. You should have passion. You should want to do this job. You should want to make things. You should want to tell stories, to build rule sets, to engage with your players, your audience, etc. But at the same time, that passion needs to serve you. It needs to be a tool in your toolbox that you're using to make your projects better. It is not going to be a thing that moves the heavens and the earth and aligns the planets and gives you success just because you were passionate enough about a project, because you really cared about something. That is putting the cart before the horse. And that is just something I wanted people to keep in mind, to internalize, especially if you're someone who gets caught up in the heady vapors of this advice and of what comes with it, because a lot of the time it can be really difficult not to lose yourself in your own passion for a project. If you're working really hard on something, if you're pushing yourself as hard as you can, and you're just thinking to yourself, what am I going to do when this hits, when everybody else sees this thing that I've made and everybody else really gets in on my passion and my creativity? Pump the brakes a bit. Absolutely react to the numbers once the numbers start coming in. And if you really like something, if you really care about a project you're working on, absolutely get enthused about it. Tell your friends and family. Get excited about it. But remember that just because you're that kind of excited, that doesn't mean that once it comes off the presses, you're going to have a lot of people clamoring to get it. Which is why you should sit down, come up with a plan. What is the next step once you have this thing made? Whether it's, where are you going to be advertising at? Are you going to be making videos telling people about it? Are you going to Kickstarter to get it funded? Do you have a social media blitz set up for once it's ready? What are you going to do to take this passion project from yourself and get it out to the people? That's what you need to know. That's what you need to be able to do. And hopefully I'll have a couple of topics on that going forward. But first, I wanted to calm the enthusiasm before I give people the plan to follow. But that's all for this week. If there's a particular topic you would like to see me talk about, or if there's an aspect of TTRPG creation, sales, etc. that you found troublesome, difficult, that you want advice on, or you're curious what my experience with it has been, please let me know that in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see the show keep going, drop a like on the video, share it around, please subscribe to the channel because getting more numbers lets the algorithm know people are paying attention. And, well, maybe watch the rest of the channel. We've got a whole bunch of different videos on all kinds of different content, and we're always happy to have eyes on it. But till next time, this is your Tabletop Mercenary, signing off. First and foremost, thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Tabletop Mercenary. If there's a question you have about being an RPG creator, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below so I can address it in a future episode. If you want to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going, then please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and giving it a share on your own social media pages to help boost the signal. Lastly, if you really enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip by buying me a Ko-fi or becoming a Patreon patron at the links in the video description below. You'll find me on both sites under the name The Literary Mercenary.